what's the alumni network and what's the benefit of working here that fuels the rest. That's a better talent attraction than trying to say, we want you and we want you for 5 years, because there's data that suggests you're not going to be here for 5 years.
Right. Welcome back to another edition of Recruiter Fuel, the community of recruiters in support of other recruiters. There's really 3 focuses that we have. Number 1, identify problems within recruiting. Number 2, turn those problems into opportunities. And number 3, and my most favorite piece of the whole thing, provide you with 1 or 2 pieces of actionable advice that you can take back to your organizations today. And like the last couple of weeks, I've got a special guest with me today, Matt Baxter. Again, Matt, thanks for taking the time out to join us today.
It's good to be here.
So for everybody that's watching, give us a little bit about yourself, background, and what are you doing that you're here on Recruiter Fuel?
So grew up in Ann Arbor, went to Hope College, a little bit of east side to west side. Started a little landscaping and lawn care company when I was in middle school, high school. Had a chance to grow that business, did some hiring myself. It was one of those things that I ran into. I didn't really care if somebody knew how to mow a lawn or weed whack. I can kind of teach you the rest. So to me, it was more a matter, can you shake my hand? Can you have a conversation? If I can put you in front of customers, then I'd love to hire you. And this was for a very small little landscaping company. So I had a chance to sell that, fun process, and one of the transitions brought me to when I was, when I was thinking about this idea of what made that company successful is hiring people that knew how to talk to people, right, and be able to have conversations, sort of that customer support. So this idea came around for Wedge was it felt like there was a gap hiring. So companies on one side are spending all this time trying to find talent, struggle in the hiring process. I'm sure we'll dive into that.
Yeah.
And candidates, I was in college at the time, on the flip side of that are dealing with, I'm trying to position myself, my resumes, my cover letters, and I don't have the 3 to 5 years experience that this job is requiring. So how can I pitch who I am as a person? And so there felt like there was this gap where Wedge came from was, can we create a platform that helps companies have a better understanding of who people are and help candidates pitch more about who they are as people in the hiring process? So
Wedge, just for anybody who isn't aware, is a video platform both for the client side and the candidate side, or future to be even more so for the candidate side.
Exactly, future to be on the candidate side. Right now, the core product, it's a video screening tool.
Yep.
So different than Zoom, FaceTime. It's asynchronous, which is a really, technical.
One way.
Exactly, one way on demand. So it's a video screening tool that we sell to HR departments or recruiting teams. So
we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But second question here is, recruiting is busy right now.
It's busy.
You're involved in it, we're involved in it in very different ways. But what's one thing that you really think is great about being in the space that we're in today?
Well, number one, I think companies are really understanding that talent is the most important part. Now, whether that's a nice soundbite or whether they actually believe that,
Two different issues.
That's a whole different conversation. But
issues.
I think a lot of investment, both externally and internally, is being made into hiring. Whether that's as a vendor, whether that's HR department budgets are bigger, whether that's recruiting budgets are bigger. I think all in all, there's a lot more attention on the space, and I think. Especially, we're going into like ridiculous labor markets, both good and bad, right? Everything's changing. So much attention is being put on to say, let's try to solve some of this stuff.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because the more and more you see in the news, the industry leaders that I'm speaking with, they've got more jobs open than there are people they can recruit. We know about the people wanting to stay home right now for whatever the reason is. But even in skilled jobs, where they're not staying home because of unemployment, there's just a shortage of them.
Right.
What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's 2 camps. There's one camp that's been around for a long time. Is you post a job, you get a bunch of applications, and what do you do to hire the best talent? That's something, that industry is blowing up. There's a lot of venture capital money going into assessments, HR platforms, all this different thing. The other side is that majority of people right now that companies want to hire are currently sitting in a role. So much is changing. It's not just a matter of I post a job, somebody's not working, let's go hire them. It's a matter of how can I try to vet that person, convince them to come work for a company. That's the recruiting side of things. So it's, just as practical as you may not be able to interview at 2 in the afternoon because that person's working. So how do you have an interview process that works during lunch or after hours?
Sure.
They got kids, they're home, so there's so much happening on both sides. Yeah, there's the Nikes of the world that, you post a job and you get tons of applications, that side. The other side is if you're a company, you have to kind of change. You can't just post a job and expect people to come. So
Why not? Why can't you expect people to? That's what companies have done that for generations, right? Post and go since the internet came about.
I think access to information has changed drastically, even when it comes to roles. So I think people have a whole new opinion of, I now looking at my friends who have this benefit, that benefit, this benefit, that benefit from all these different companies, and then it's the social media, it's the comparison game. And then you think, I'm sitting in a role and how can I get a job that has all that?
Yeah.
So companies right now are drastically competing about saying, well, if I just pay a little bit more, I'll find the right talent. No, you got to find a way to actually pitch yourself, to market yourself, just as a company as much as a candidate.
That's in previous recruiter fields, we've been talking a ton about marketing the opportunity, marketing the company, whether you're an internal recruiter, external recruiter,
Yep.
or the company itself, positioning it in a way that stands out from the crowd. Because look what happens on LinkedIn every day, your feed, my feed. Hiring, and they all have the exact same kind of, if you're interested, please let us know. Well, how are you standing out?
Send an email to hello at. Oh, right, I'm going to really get on that one.
Resume at, right? I mean, marketing is such a big piece that I'm glad you're bringing that up. So let's kind of switch gears to the kind of the practical advice. If marketing is so important, you've got, Wedge has this video platform, but if I'm a recruiter sitting here watching you and I have this conversation, bringing all that together, what's a piece of advice that a recruiter can take back to their organization, third party, corporate, doesn't really matter, that can help them in the situation that we're in right now?
First thing is, I think we all could do a better job at having an honest conversation of what type of people do you actually want? Do you want people who are there to fill a seat and just to be there, be a worker bee and move on, right? So it's not a bad thing, but you need to actually consider, are you looking for somebody who is playing a role and they're hired for that role, or are you actually looking for a team member that may grow with the company?
So let's address that one first. I'm going to take this in two pieces.
Conversation.
And the reason that I want to address that, it is a big conversation, but let's think about, let's say I'm a recruiter. I'm a corporate recruiter for a big Fortune 500 company. My focus is not on bringing people that last, actually. I'm held accountable for a butt in a seat. So can I really have that conversation about hiring somebody? Practically speaking, theoretically, I get it, right? But practically speaking, can I even have that conversation?
One of the conversations you have to have, if that's your role, why are you spending so much time looking for somebody with 5 to 10 years experience in that space? Because that means they've stuck with a role, and they're probably not that interested in changing that role that much. So if you're looking for somebody to make a placement quickly, why aren't you looking at job history where somebody has a trajectory of doing that after every year?
Jumping.
Exactly, because they're going to be the perfect role to place.
A
little bit higher pay, a little bit better benefits, and they're going to get in that role. And that company may just want somebody who can be there for a year and a half. Why are we spending so much time? This is a generational shift, but people sticking in jobs, and this is not just the millennials, right? People sticking in jobs for over 3 to 5 years is kind of an anomaly now. So now we need to have a better understanding. I was having a conversation on a podcast actually a little while ago. We should, as organizations, do a better job at what's the alumni network and what's the benefit of working here that fuels the rest. That's a better talent attraction than trying to say, we want you and we want you for 5 years, because there's data that suggests you're not going to be here for 5 years. So do a better job at positioning to say, if you work here, you are going to be fueled for the next thing, whether it's here or the next, whatever may come from that. And I think companies could do a better job at investing into what's the alumni network going to be like. So.
Okay, so that's kind of that front end piece, but continue on these golden nuggets that you're giving our recruiting community that's actually watching.
So I think if you really, really care to hire for culture and fit, right? There's a massive amount of job descriptions out there that are so poorly written, there's opinions on that. But saying we hire for culture, we hire for fit. I don't really care what Steve's background is. I care about Steve's personality.
But all the requirements on the job description are skills, education.
First thing I look at, what's your ACT, Steve? Are you kidding me? What are your 3 to 5 years experience? And you're weeding people out based upon qualifications that your job description suggests you don't even care about that. So I think, and there's nothing wrong with hiring for qualifications. There are roles that require a certain set of qualifications in order to do the job.
I'm not gonna hire a surgeon to operate on me if they don't have the qualifications.
Exactly. My dad was a surgeon. If he didn't have the qualification, I probably would say, hey, you're not gonna be in that role very long. But if you're hiring for, there's so many roles that there's if you're looking to hire an account manager or sales rep, why does their 3 to 5 years industry experience matter that much versus their ability to come out and sell, be personable, have that relationship?
A salesperson experience does not equal skill.
Exactly right. And so I think just having it's just as much what are you actually looking for in that role? Is it qualifications or is it skill set? Or culture and fit. And having a conversation and then going back and saying, we've now had an honest, we care about one of the two. Now looking at the different tools in your hiring process of what fleshes that out.
Really, we've got to care about both. But I want to go back to this years of experience thing for a second. One bit of advice if you're watching this right now. When your manager tells you, I want 3 to 5 years of experience, don't ask them why. Ask them, what do they need to know based on that 3 to 5? Because we're making an assumption. The hiring leader is making an assumption. They know A, B, C, and D. You don't want to know about 3 to 5 years of experience. You want to know that they know how to do A, B, C, and D. So there's a piece for skills, but that culture piece is something that I think we still don't know enough about. We still don't define it the same way. At Wedge and what you're doing with the video interviewing, how do you define it?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, internally, for our own, we're a startup, right? Fast growing, scaling up, so we need people who can learn quickly. So it matters a little bit less about your qualifications. You know, if we're hiring for a developer, we want somebody with some development skill, right? If we're hiring for sales, we want somebody who at least has the salesman personality, less than what's your 3 to 5 year experience. But I think, number one, the ability to learn, and I think the ability to communicate really well. That's important internally. So I think the same thing for our customers. You know, Wedge is a product that works remarkably well for specifically the pre-screening side of things. Maybe not for every single role, maybe not the high-end executive roles as we've talked about, but if you're looking to hire for an account manager, sales rep, using a pre-screening tool that allows you to have a better understanding of that personality before you bring them in that's where we talk to our clients, and that's where we have that conversation, is to say, you know, what kind of roles are you hiring for? What do you actually care about? And here's where we can come in and help, and here's where we can, you know, we're not going to help, and we're going to refer them your way. So there's that conversation as well.
So as a recruiter, what am I actually seeing? So if we're using Wedge, and this is not meant to be a sales pitch for Wedge, but it brings up a good point about the paper resume versus seeing somebody in person, at least on a recording. What am I getting? What's the advantage of having that versus just the resume?
So I think the resume is a paper trail, assuming the resume is accurate, which there's a whole slew of
titles.
Yeah. There's a whole slew of, but assuming the resume is accurate, it's a paper trail of what somebody's accomplished, right, or what they've done in their history. A Wedge, what it does, and when you're watching a video, you get a better understanding of who that person is, right? You get a better understanding of them, their ability to pitch themselves, them to ask questions, or whatever it may be. So that it's much more of a holistic approach, a better understanding of a combination of saying, here's what they've done and here's who they are, and that's who you're getting in the pre-screening stages. That's who you're getting. So that before I spend the expensive time of hiring, interviewing, bringing a bunch of team members in to vet this person, I have a better understanding of who I'm bringing in the room.
Gives you some additional details so that you're only spending time wisely with people that are probably a little bit closer fit to what you're really looking for.
And we can vet out some of the things like candidate ghosting. We can vet out some of the things if this person's not even going to show up. We can vet out some of the things of saying, oh, in the first 30 seconds, not a chance, it's not going to work. Those are some of the things that we can help really, really early on too.
Well, those are some good bits of information. I mean, the resumes are not as useful as they once were because we know that we've got to hire for more than just what's skills. So I think that's a good bit of information for everybody to see out there. And that the fact that there are tools like that can allow a recruiter to be much more efficient and much more pinpointed in terms of who they're speaking with. So efficiency, quality, there's all kinds of issues. Thank you for sharing the story with us, Matt. We'd love to have you back on it at some point on another Recruiter Fuel.
Thank you very much.
So for all of you that are watching, thank you for the time again. Matt, this is about recruiters for recruiters. That's the whole point of Recruiter Fuel. If you have an idea, if you have some thoughts worth sharing to other recruiters, please reach out to me directly. If it makes sense, we'll have you on so you can actually share that. If you want to watch all of the additional sessions or the upcoming sessions, click on the link right now. Sign up. You'll be notified for every new Recruiter Fuel. It's something you definitely want in your inbox. Matt, again, thank you for your time. We'll see you again soon.